Hey, what is up, everybody? Hunter Orrell here with a fantastic interview today, joined with OX Bread Guy. He is on the MegaETH team, and if you're not aware of what MegaETH is, it is one of the most anticipated new L2s coming out. Testnet is in 30 days. And their big claim to fame is that they've made compromises around the decentralized approach of how they're handling their L2, which allows them to do up to 100,000 transactions per second, something that we have not seen at even remotely close from other L2s who are down in the 80s to hundreds, for example, where base is. Bread Guy is also one of the faces and hosts of the Modern Market Show, which is one of my favorite other pieces of content. So if you're watching this and you're not watching that, you're missing out, and go make sure you are subscribed and following them. But this entire conversation is a very technical and deep dive into what MegaETH is doing, and I hope it basically gives you a 1-hour crash course on what MegaETH is, how they achieve what they're doing, and how they're approaching, in my mind, one of the most community first principle led L2 launches that I have seen. They had their Echo raise. They're doing a new NFT mint, which is essentially a way to purchase tokens for their L2. And yes, it is highly, highly anticipated. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it significantly. And here is OX Bread Guy. Let's just jump right into this because, like I said before we got started, there is I do show notes, and this is one that I don't even think I can. I'm not even going to try to look at these because there's so much to uncover here. Bread Guy, first off, thank you for jumping on here. If people aren't familiar with you, you are a one of the show hosts for Modern Market. But
Yeah.
most notably, most people are going to know you from MegaETH, which has absolutely engulfed mindshare within the crypto space. I could go on a little rant about what MegaETH is, but I think the best way to start this is just who you are, what you're involved with, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, I guess I gotta get comfy, right? We're in here for an hour, so lock in, people. Yeah, I mean, so just TLDR, like my own shit, right? I've been in the space for a long time, 2017. MegaETH has been building for 3 years, but I didn't join them until November. I was aware of them in July. I'm technical. I have a technical background. I made my space as I carved my niche out in Twitter as like a technical content educator, whatever, content creator, how you want to say it. You mentioned I was a host on Modern Market. I still do that. I was cutting it up with those guys just like as a way to like talk about the space, do whatever. And in that journey of writing about protocols that I thought were interesting, novel, whatever. Again, I'm a technical guy, so like I was attracted to some of that stuff. I wrote stuff about MegaETH specifically, again, back in July when I became aware of them. Because I was not working for anyone. I was working for myself specifically. I was Web3 full time. I reached out to them and said, "Hey, like, I want to contribute." Right. I was starting to shoot my shot at a few places. There's like 1 or 2 protocols that I reached out to and said, like, I see your vision. I want to contribute. They rejected me. Frankly, I talked to Bing. Yeah, she was the founder. I talked to her. She's like, yeah, join the Discord. I was like, oh, fuck off. Like, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not doing the Discord grind from 2021. So I was like, all right, cool. And I kept writing about them because I was still interested in them. And it's a technically complex project, which is why I gravitated to them. And I tell stories on Twitter, right, about technical stuff. And I kept doing it. They saw I was able to command some attention on CT, and eventually came back and said, "Hey, like, we need help telling our story on CT," and offered me a core role. So like now I'm head of like growth community. Like we don't have a defined role for it, but like I'm helping the team iterate on stuff and just doing multiple hats and trying to command some of the story that's on CT.
I think it's probably the most important role here because of how technical and I would say new I think on the technical side of like actual stats that MegaETH provides. And I think a lot of people there are some skeptics out there, I would say, and there's some people that are like, okay, what is like, even with the Fluffles announcement yesterday,
Yeah.
which had, I mean, it was very both like different ends of the spectrum. You had some people that were applauding you, and then some people that were like, what are these guys going to do with another 10,000 ETH? I mean, we might as well just start that off and address
Yeah.
address the elephant in the room, which is fluffles.
Yeah, so I mean, like your your initial conversation is like, what are they going to do with another 10,000 ETH? I think that that number is a relative number size, right? Like if you look at traditional projects, how a lot of these chains have come to market, you see that like a lot of the value that they have provided to the space is captured in private markets, right? Bearer chains going live here in a couple of days. They've had multiple rounds of $100 million, right? The you Monad is up in the ten or hundreds of millions of dollars raised. So it's not abnormal for these infrastructure projects to spend a lot of time raising, again from VCs, absurd amounts of money, which is fine. Like this stuff takes time, right?
Yep.
Multiple years projects, it's fair, it's cool. But the criticism has been that a lot of that value capture has been in private markets, and then by the time it gets to public markets, it's down only because, you know, there's a lot of tokens that need to be sold, right? That people need to recoup their cost. Um, the team, again, it's been going for 3 years. I joined recently. The team, since the beginning, has made a very deliberate decision to not raise from a bunch of VCs, right? To hold off on that stuff. So you see 10,000 ETH, it's roughly $30 million, and you're like, oh my God, these guys are raising a gajillion dollars because you're benchmarking that against a 10K PFP, right? Like these other NFT mints. You're not benchmarking it, funnily enough, against like the Pain pre-sale that was 2 days ago. That's literally just a picture of Harold raising $40 million. That's not absurd for some reason, but this is absurd.
Yep.
This is again to say the team has raised total at this point. It was $20 million from some key investors, Dragonfly, George Lubin, Vitalik, whatever. They did $10 million. We did $10 million from Echo, right? So Echo is another way to get money into the hands of people because we want to try to like return to some of this skin in the game, wealth effects stuff that we can do. Got about 32,000 or 3,200 people there, and then we promised then that there would be other mechanisms to come where we allow people, if they want to have skin in the game, is what we've been referring to it as. This is another deployment of that. So if we, and again, this isn't two tranches, right? So we have the 5K up front based on retroactive stuff. You can come, you can see if you're whitelisted, all that stuff. There'll be another 5K a couple of months from now. So it's really $15 million, right? You're splitting it in half right here. That next 5K will come a couple of months from now. And that'll be a proactive thing where you have to participate in some way to get on the list. But yeah, so it's the relative numbers, right? If we get $15 million on this mint, $15 million plus $10 million from the community and Echo plus $20 million, you're looking at $45 million total that has been raised, relative to hundreds of millions of dollars from other projects. So we're just trying to make sure that distribution actually goes to people that are active participants in the space that actually want to try to get in on this stuff, because we think that's a dying craft.
You guys have taken the community first principle to the extreme compared to most other large ventures. I think that it's been noticed by a lot of the community. It's been applauded by a lot of the community. Notably, like you mentioned, Echo was a great way to first do that, where you
Yeah.
guys got in what, like 3,200 people. Could you, because I haven't talked to anybody who's done Echo before, like as a founder on stream. Can you just speak to the process, that like what that was like and why you guys made that decision to do that type of raise?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't involved. I wasn't involved in either of these, frankly. It's tough. Like that's why a lot of this stuff is tough because I'm a U.S. citizen. So like I can't actually build out some of this shit for regulation. Like
Right.
some of the rules in the actual mint are put in place because I can't participate or we can't do certain things. So going through Echo again, learning through what the conversations of the other team, and then planning stuff is like, you know, Vitalik Dragonfly. There was a round of raise, right? The Echo round was the exact same terms as everyone that got in that VC round. So it was allowed to go into that. You have to go, and again, I didn't go through the process, but you have to actually match the terms to some degree, is my understanding. You go on there, you find different groups within Echo. They serve as like a lead investor, and then everyone within that group gets access to the actual the project, the deal that they find. So the team sourced the groups. I don't know how they picked them necessarily, but they got a couple of groups that they aligned with. And yeah, we sold out 10 million, which is the largest sale ever,
Yep.
in under a minute. So their appetite was there, which we were, enthusiastic about. And now because of that, you spin out a core group of people, right? We have 3,200 people that are crypto native that want us to succeed. They want to have exposure to our ecosystem, right? They're trying to talk to us about the Mega Mafia projects, which are the like it's our accelerator. It's the projects building on top of MegaETH already that we've been working with for a year now at this point. So it's better. It's all around better, right? We would rather have that group of people that are crypto native that can help us and actually give valuable feedback, criticize us because they are native, than having a couple of VCs that are just going to give us a check and walk away, right?
Yep.
Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it and I think to also the point of the demand and the community's, I think, love for that raise, it brought me back to OG art blocks mints. It felt like a gas war, it felt like mania. So you can tell there's a high demand for what you guys are doing. I
Yeah, we're trying to
let's
avoid that with this, with the fluffle stuff. I
I
know, like, the reception has been good. It's more, frankly, than we're excited for this. We thought it was going to be well received because it's another round. Like you said, the mindshare, we flipped Barachain somehow today. They're going to mint
Yep.
tomorrow. So like, it's awesome. We love it. It's cool. But now we know we don't want to other sides, right? Other side mint, right? We don't want to like burn $80 million in this. So we're iterating right now. We'll come up with a plan where we're trying to mitigate as best we can what the gas war would be.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I unfortunately have not qualified for it and I missed Echo, so I'm in pain right now. I'm gonna have to I guess I'm gonna have to be super active for the second bit.
I tell you what, I've been fucked all over being on this team, right? So I'm a top yapper, right, on Kaido,
Yeah,
right? So I got 6,000 of these things, 7,000 of these fucking things. We did round one, and all my homies were able to sell their yaps, right? They got all these things for making $20,000, $30,000 on this shit. MegaETH. I had to vote MegaETH. I had to petition for that, so I did that at the cost of zero. So because of that, I made nothing. We lost the first round. We won the second one, but didn't make my money there. Cool. That's one thing in the hat. And and then like, yeah, like I'm a US citizen. Like I can't participate in the echo round because I'm not an accredited investor. Like there's all these rules. Cool. I'm on the team, so now I can't mint this NFT. So it's like, I get exposure obviously because I'm working on the team, but like I can't get exposure to this event or the echo event, or I didn't get exposure to the app stuff. I'm get just like my payment from the team that like, yeah,
I think you'll make it okay.
I'll be fine. But yeah.
Yeah. Let's take a step back here. Let's actually address like the grand vision and what
Mm.
MegaETH is. Because we've kind of gotten a little ahead of ourselves, and I think it helps to have the
Yeah. Yeah,
context of
yeah.
like why the L2, how your guys are achieving these high TPSs. Let's just jump into it.
Yeah, all right, yeah. So I guess the easiest thing to understand, people are familiar with L2, right? We're an L2, but we're a new interpretation of an L2. So we have some nuances that allow us to unlock this next level thing. Um, I could talk about the journey that led to the decision of Megi just generally, and it starts with the founder of Yilong, right? So Yilong is PhD from Stanford, low latency systems, right? His entire career is frankly fucking up databases, or not databases, but data centers, right? So he goes into these things that are meant for just it's a bunch of computers in a room, send information between each other fast as fuck, right? That's what he does. Like he optimizes for that shit in nanoseconds, microseconds, right? Like that was just always what he did. He came along some papers for Web two, right? Or sorry, Web three, saw them and was like, these guys are doing it all wrong. Like I can beat this, right? I can make the best. So cool. He decides he wants to go down this journey. He starts like doing a proof of concept, whatever. This started like 3 years ago. He ends up reaching out to Lei, who's the other technical co-founder. And Lei actually is, he is a PhD or he's a graduate from MIT, right? And consensus systems. So very Web3 focused. He was a researcher that was paid for from Ethereum, right? From the Ethereum Foundation. They sponsored some of his research and consensus. He co-wrote the paper with EigenLayer, Sriram, for EigenDA. So like he's been in the space kind of in the background. It's just like this brainchild dude. Those two, whatever, synced up. They're like, all right, let's build some shit, right? They chose, you know, Lay's kind of affiliated with Ethereum for that reason. They chose Ethereum and said, okay, let's build this thing. Originally called a Mega Rollup. Now it's called MegaETH, obviously. Um, and they're just like, all right, let's build this fucking thing, right? They want to build the most performant system. And in doing that, made some decisions, chose to be an L2, and have frankly just been doing that ever since. Now, the nuance of like why we're different and why we unlock another level of performance is like, you view these things, Base, Arbitrum, even Solana or Ethereum, whatever. They're, they're they're machines, right? Just pumping out a shit ton of information, right? Just data, 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 data. Ethereum pumps out more than Bitcoin. Solana pumps out more than Ethereum, right? It's just like as the thing is faster, more throughput, whatever, it pumps out a lot of data. These guys are creating a machine, frankly, the sequencer, to like pump out a shit ton of data on scales beyond what like all the other rollups are doing, because that's what they do, right? Elon is like his entire job was getting data back and forth in data centers. They're creating this thing, this construction using like L3 stuff, or not L3, L2 stuff, and because the data that they're pumping out is so much, so big, like this transaction, you talk about 100 TPS, 100K TPS, right? Stuff like that. Um, because it's so big, we have to make a decision to remove one of the things that would traditionally go to Ethereum and use an eigenlayer for it. So this is like basically just the transactions that we generate, we have to post over there. And that's the reason why, like, because like Base posts everything to Ethereum.
Yep.
It's the reason why Base cannot go faster than it's already at. Right, it's at a limit right now where it does like 200 TPS across all rollups. That's Arbitrum, that's Base, that's anything that fully settles to Ethereum. They're doing 200 TPS total across all of them. Right, Solana right now is doing like 1.2K TPS, so 1,200 transactions per second. So it's like the collective 40 rollups are doing an eighth of what Solana is doing. Right, so the team made the pragmatic decision and said, look, man, like we would love to settle to Ethereum. It would be awesome, but we're going to make this one decision to settle to EigenDA. We're still going to go to Ethereum. Like there's a second thing. The source of truth is still Ethereum. We post that to Ethereum, but there's a second thing that we post to EigenLayer that says like that'll uncap the top of what we can do. So now we are still settling to Ethereum, just like all other L2s, but the transaction bundles, all the data we're actually creating, we're just going to put on EigenLayer. And let them handle that because they have an unbound cap, right? They're not unbound, but it's much, 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 much higher.
Is that settlement being delayed because and maybe this is my
I think
lack
it's
of
very technical.
understanding.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah.
this is where I started to be like, okay, maybe I need to actually discuss this, but the EigenDA isn't a settlement layer. It is just a store of proof. And then you're
Yeah,
going from EigenDA to Ethereum, and then that is settlement. So is that a delayed, like on the security side,
yeah,
like how is that handled?
yeah. So I made a picture of this the other day, actually. So like literally just like if you view the blockchain, right? Big block, and each blockchain, these L2s put out two pieces of information, right? One is the proof. It's literally just a little piece, it's a little string that just says like this is the state of the chain. This is this is who owns what. It's a mathematical thing that says like what's going on the chain. It's like a snapshot every now and then, snapshot to L1, snapshot to L1, snapshot to L1. That's the truth, right? And then the rest of it is all of the data that led from one truth to the next truth, right? So like I
Hmm,
do a snapshot and a snapshot to get from these two things. I need to know all of the history that took place between those two things to recreate, to make sure this next one isn't a lie, right? Like that's
right.
so the all of that, housing all of that information. If you create a lot of information that happens between those 2 points, it again, Ethereum's not as big. It's slow. It's like it went to this very mindful approach of like not scaling too fast, right? That was the whole modular approach. It's like we're stable, we're live, we're consistent, we're censorship resistant. It's not big. Solana's big, right? Solana's going for big. So because of that, like EigenLayer has an AVS, and AVS is just like one of the services on top of EigenLayer. Its literal job is just like post data to us. We'll hold data for as long as necessary for people to like recreate the truth to get from A to B, and then we'll move on to the next data. It's like its sole purpose it's actually like Celestia. Celestia is the same thing. Celestia is
Right.
created as the sole purpose is just to hold data, right? For other chains to do this shit. So we are leveraging EigenLayer to do the exact same thing because it's a little more aligned, whatever. And their scale, frankly, is higher than Celestia right now. So like we need even more scale than even Celestia can do right now. Um, and so yeah, we would store our information there so that you, as someone like watching the system, watching us process data, you can then go to EigenDA and say, okay, give me all of their information. I need to make sure that they didn't just lie to me. And then you go and you check the distance between A and B, make sure it's true. Cool, we move on. Or you see that we're lying, right? That someone's lying, and then you can, if that's true, you can challenge it and then like do your own stuff, make sure that's not doesn't stay true. So yeah, it's a secondary thing. Nothing actually goes like through EigenDA. EigenDA just sits there and holds the information for
Gotcha.
us.
Gotcha. It's fascinating. And then the way you guys are doing the sequencer is it's a single sequencer.
Yep.
Um, and again, I'm trying not to come into this as like I know it all, and I'll admit
Yep.
where I have questions. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the concerns I saw was kind of like, hey, we've seen like if there's a single source of break, you can see what
Mhm.
happened to Solana, where you have like actual transactions stopping. Um, and you guys have given up a little bit of that decentralized, like fully like Ethereum decentralized
Yep.
ethos for the speed, which is, I think, when we're balancing out what you guys are trying to do, it makes sense. But there is some risk of like downtime if things were to go awry or if there's a security issue. Like there is that is like a risk, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like so like that's the balance that everyone's like, and like you referenced Solana there. Solana made a very opinionated approach and said, like, look, bros, like we're gonna break occasionally, right? Like we are gonna maximize user experience, throughput, and like the overall performance of our chain. Like that's what we prioritize. So Ethereum, on the other hand, said like, look, guys, we're going to prioritize permissionlessness, censorship resistance, and like staying up, never going down. We will never go down. Like that's what it really prioritizes, right? Which is fine. Like they're just two value props, right? We are in a similar vein where like to be honest, like we may go down at some point because like we're fucking gonna juice this thing because like we think the net benefits of like one, the market has just shown like it's you know what it's maybe going down isn't as taboo as we thought. Like it's down for
Mhm.
a little bit, you figure it out, then like the casino fires right back up, right? Like that's fine. Like there is a market demand for that. Just same thing with like Hyperliquid. When Hyperliquid came to market, people are flooding it because like, oh my god, there's 4 validators. It's not even decentralized. Like, oh my god, but like users like there's a clear demand for on-chain experiences that are highly performant and improve the UX. Where the balance is, I think, is person to person, right? Some people are like they don't give a shit, right? They don't want to degen on the next like perp dex, right? They just want to like hold on to their assets and be able to send it across to whoever and make sure that no one can stop them. Awesome.
Right.
Use Ethereum mainnet. If you want to like ape a shitter for like 20K and make sure it lands in 5 seconds and then like you can do whatever, like yeah man, like there's going to be a solution for that. And we think there's a gap in the Ethereum market for that because right now the upper bound of like that experience is not really replicated. It can't be replicated because everything is constrained,
Nope.
so we're breaking away from it.
Let's dive into that gap area. This high TPS has multiple applications within the high frequency trading niche, within the gaming niche, within the token launching niche, and I would
Yeah.
say also like from an information of like what is happening from a moment to moment on a blockchain. Like now you have this like you can actually look and see like, okay, I know what is happening down to like the microsecond on a chain.
Mm.
Um, let's talk about applications. Who's building there? Where you think your biggest green pastures are?
Yeah. All right. So I think the first, like the one major thing I want to keep reiterating with what we're doing, like the thing that was the unlock for me, right? Like I actually before joining the team, I was like getting pilled on the Solana vertical, right? Like
Mhm.
I was like, okay, like I'm not really thrilled by a lot of these L2 constructions. It feels like they're not performant enough. They're recreating the L1 on top of the L1 and they're reintroducing things that like limited Ethereum into the L2, which then limited the L2. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about like consensus, right? Like if you're on mainnet, if you're any mainnet, right? Any L1, they have consensus because they're a full blockchain. They have to create a transaction. You, Hunter, you put your transaction on chain. A bunch of nodes have to agree that this thing is true. Then once it's agreed to be true, enough applications can then ingest it, and it just created this lag of like, okay, uh, everything needs to be agreed upon before it can actually be true in the world, according to the blockchain. Um, and L2s were getting fudded pretty heavily, right? Because they had the sequencer for your audience, if they're not familiar, right? So again, you have a distributed node set at the L1. Everything has to agree on everything. It's all nice and cool, but it creates lag time and how long it takes for something to be true. At the L2 level, traditionally, there's a single machine, one machine that is just ordering all of these transactions. There's no agreement on it, right? It's just this thing. You send a transaction, it packages it in a block, sends it out. It's true fairly quickly. Um, a lot of L2s were, in order to stay aligned, were saying like, well, we don't want this centralized block producer. We want to decentralize the sequencer. Decentralizing it means like, okay, we're going to add in 5 or 6 sequencers and then make sure all the sequencers agree on this thing, and then no one could build it. And then it was basically creating the same construction on top of the L1 that was the same shit,
Yeah.
which is annoying. So I was
Yeah.
like, Mega, yeah. So they lean in the opposite direction, right? So like I saw what they were doing, and this is working up to something, I promise. They MegaETH went the opposite direction and said, okay, like fuck consensus, right? We're already doing that on mainnet. It
Right.
does what it needs to do. It has all the agreement. And because we can eliminate this thing that has a lag time of like everyone coming to agreement, we can shrink the amount of time that we have to hold on to a message for before it can be true, right? And our goal is to shrink that thing down to an infinitesimally small number, right? 10 millisecond block times, we're going down to 1. What that means for a user is the lag time between you putting something on chain and that thing being true, and then the rest of the world being able to see that and act upon it is way, way, way smaller. Smaller than it can ever be for any L1, because L1s have to come to agreement on stuff because they have a node, right? So that means, again, use an example. Just I like to use bid and accept bid, right? It's very simple. Everyone does it, whether it's a NFT or a meme coin or whatever, right? If you, Hunter, were to place a bid for an NFT on, we use Base as an example. Base has 2-second block times. You put the bid on chain, goes 1, 2. Now it's on chain. It's true. And then, oh, I see your bid because now it's true. 1, 2. I've accepted it. 4 seconds passes. Awesome, cool. The whole loop of that transaction, from you to do something, me to see that thing, me to act on that thing, and then whatever, is about 4 seconds, right? If you understand the thresholds of a human and where they like how our brains work, right? The common accepted threshold is like after like 100 milliseconds, which is a tenth of a second, it's like perceived as instantaneous. At about a second, you start to get a little distracted, right? You start to lose your train of thought. At 10 seconds, you're totally you're fucked off, like you can't be bothered. So because we can no longer have to deal with agreement, that lag time, we're shrinking that down to basically the instantaneous field, right? So like 10-second block times, if you account for the time it takes for messages to go back and forth, you can do things on chain now where you send it, it's on chain, and then the world reflects it, and then I can act upon it all within half a second, right? So now we're going from 4 seconds to half a second for the full loop for both of us to do something. And that then, now the payoff, that then enables Web 2 applications. That's why you're seeing our branding that is like the real time blockchain.
Yep. You guys have said we're the Web 2, the most Web 2 feel of Web 3.
That's the goal, right? So like I'll call out one of our teams, like you were asking, like what does it enable? What's the green pastures? We have 15 teams, I think actually 17 teams that we have in our accelerator called Mega Mafia that we're trying to accelerate. They're just founders who understand the tech and say like I can do cool, weird, wacky shit with this, and they're trying to do that, right? So again, Euphoria is a good example. This guy's he used to be an MEV searcher, like he's just this giga brain like back end dude that you never see, but he's fucking up the ecosystem. You guys don't ever realize it. He's creating a thing that's called tap trading, right? So if you use that example I just gave you, where you push a button, takes 1, 2 to get on chain, right? And then me to accept it or whatever, 1, 2, that lag time of that acceptance. Play that out with you playing a tap game, right? Which is like a normal Web 2 thing, right? You tap your fucking phone, it does a thing. If you had to wait, like if you were thinking Robinhood, you had to wait 2 seconds for that confetti every time you pushed a button, like it's not fun, right? That's not interactive. If they have to wait that long for that to be true, it sucks, right?
Yep.
But now because we're making an opinionated decision, right? It comes with trade-offs. We're admitting that. But because we make that opinionated decision to say we're not going to recreate that stuff, we're gonna own this domain and shrink it as much as we can. It enables a tap trading thing. Again, this is perp trading, and you can sit there and fucking tap your phone, and you tap it, and within 200 milliseconds, confetti shoots out, or whatever the fuck that you do, right? Like it's interactive. Then now it's real time. Now it's in something you're used to. It's Web 2, right? It's what you're used to with your phone, basically everything.
Right.
So that's the green pasture for us. That's a trading example, but we do some unique shit because the performance is so high of like, the on-chain clubs, like all that stuff. We can do some other weird, wacky shit that is like not necessarily an app, but is like a elevator for the entire ecosystem, which is like, again, because we have the big sequencers, we're not going to have like 1,000 of them distributed. We're just going to have like a handful that will eventually rotate through and have them build stuff. We can have market makers now like co-locate next to us, right? So like now we have someone sit next to our machine and have a predictable time lag between us and between them. and it can get on chain very fast. And because our chain is so performant, they can sit there and manage a book, cancel delete or cancel order, cancel order, whatever, and make it cheap enough. So like now the spreads in the entire DeFi ecosystem can shrink, or the liquidity can deepen a little bit, because you can actually have these market makers come on chain. Because previously, if you have a distributed node set, right, if you're on Solana,
Yep.
because
Yep.
Solana is very fast, but Solana has a decentralized node set, right? So it's first person's building a block, they're in New York, next one's in China, next one's in Africa, next one's in China, next one's in London, next one's in New York. Market makers don't want to do that all across the world, right? Their latency goes from 50 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds. And you guys are interacting in microseconds. Like they're
Yep.
not, that's not even the same ballpark. But now it's a little predictable. Like now they know, okay, if we do this next to this person, we can actually manage this. It's predictable latency, predictable costs. Now we can start bringing this stuff on chain. And then you as a user aren't, you're not, you don't have an app for a market maker, but you experience that through the DeFi ecosystem now being elevated a little bit.
Do you guys see yourself as being positioned to basically turn the DeFi ecosystem on its head from a fidelity standpoint then?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like
I mean,
it's an experiment. Or yeah, it would be great. We have some people that are doing some cool shit. Like, we have several teams that are well positioned to build some novel DeFi products. So we're excited to see them hit. And like GTE, again, they're working with the market makers. We have our
yep.
perp decks. We just announced today a lending protocol that does like they do what is it? That's a new model of lending, which matched with an on-chain clob, which is like it gets
Hmm.
kind of DeFi heavy, but like it's just a new model for lending that I saw the eyes light up in all the other DeFi projects in our team call today. They're like, "Oh fuck, I can do some cool shit with this because it's like it's a new model. How do I deal with this?" They liked it, so it's just like we get to let experiments be run that couldn't be run before, and that's kind of what I'm excited. If it leads to a paradigm shift, I mean, cool, awesome. Obviously, we'd love that, but who knows?
It's exciting. Again, you guys are not following consensus and pushing for I keep calling it green pasture, but you're
Mhm.
trying to do something differently and address technical limitations that we've had by balancing out the web 2 versus web 3 ethos.
Solana and Hyperliquid have opened my eyes up to maybe us having over-indexed on some of the properties that we thought were the most crucial things in the ecosystem. Now I know Hyperliquid is much like younger, so it's harder to describe that. Like things can always go weird from here.
Right.
But Solana, I think, is a very clear example of like you can make these opinionated bets and ultimately try to enable applications and users. And whether or not, like, we're not going to replace Ethereum. Ethereum has a place. We're not going to replace some of these other stuff, but like there's a market segment that is underserved, and we're looking to serve them.
I love that. Um, can you from the perspective of like non-DeFi stuff that's happening in your ecosystem, can you talk about maybe on the like game like are you guys expecting like gaming projects to come
Yeah, we have
over,
seen. Yeah.
NFT projects? Um and obviously you guys are EVM compatible. So all of a sudden you have this becomes an optionality for so many developers to start looking at and figuring out how they can play into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a. I'm learning this, frankly. I'm learning there's an entire subset of people that are just performance oriented, and they love just like maxing shit out. So I think in the EVM, we're EVM equivalent. Like we would break that if we needed to because of like a UX unlock, but we're aiming for equivalency, which means like contract can just one to one deploy. But there's an entire ecosystem of people, especially in the EVM, that are like they finally get a chance to potentially build something that is just like fucking fast, right? Like I don't know if you guys follow like Vectorized. Vectorized is basically like one of the EVMs solidity maxis, right? Like the dude's fucking, he's a king. He's always talking about this shit. Like he's engineering the space, and he's always looking at what's going on in the Solana world, and he's like, man, I could do this much more elegantly in the EVM world, but because in the EVM world today, whether it's on base or it's on mainnet, is kind of scarcity mindset has a scarcity mindset. A lot of it's gas golfing, a lot of it's like optimizing and shit, not just like raw, like what can I do with this language? And because we're one of the few environments that are EVM and also leaning into like this abundance mindset that Solana has, that Hyperliquid has, we enable a kind of a new bound or upper bound of like what these on-chain creatives can even do. Um, this isn't a gaming example, but we have games of like people coming over and like literally putting the entire game on chain, right? It's just finally there's a EVM chain that is fast enough and abundant enough that we don't have to just put the NFTs on chain, right? We put the character movement on chain. We can do whatever. So in our incubator, or not, I don't want to say incubator, it's our accelerator, because some of these guys are just like doing their own thing. We're helping them raise and we're helping them like go to market and stuff, but they're doing their own shit. We had like a couple of AI agent teams that actually like have Web 2 products. Like we're really leaning into like trying to find products that have like this emotional value element to them, where it's not just like, okay, it's the 55th version of the Uniswap DEX
Yeah.
doing whatever, right? So no one wants that. So like
Yeah.
our DEX GTE is a homegrown native application. Our lending protocol of Avon was announced today. We have a perp DEX Valhalla launched or announced 2 weeks ago. Techo, which is a lending leverage thing. Euphoria, which is a was whatever. I'm going into DeFi stuff. You didn't want that. And then we have a couple of AI version of stuff like Nectar AI. We have who was there's a game that actually was just announced on the chain. But anyways, it's like we're trying. Oh, Sweep, right? Sweep is a streaming app. Like it's a team that just crushes in Web 2, right? They had an app store or app that got in the app store. They're actually plugged into a lot of the Twitch streamers. They're already like they've been streaming, doing stuff. They're adding a Web 3 component to their game, or not their game, but their product. And they're like, now we finally have a Web3 product that we can plug into that is interactive enough for us to be able to do like this, like betting on streaming, right? Like predicting streams, noise, which is it's more DeFi, but it's like betting on trends instead of betting on actual assets, right? So you can bet on the mind share of ETH increasing as opposed to the dollar of ETH increasing, the price of ETH
Right.
increasing, or the dollar or the mind share of AI agents, whatever.
It's fascinating because betting on like a Fortnite win real time is an example that I've used before where,
Yep.
that market could open up with like, 45 seconds left in a game. You cannot do that on ETH, right? You have 3
Yeah.
blocks to have transactions hit. You can
I had someone
even
reach out to me about horse racing. They're like, we have to bet in the race. We cannot do it outside of the race. That's where the huge pull is. I didn't know about that. He's like, this is one of the first times I think I could do that. So yeah.
it opens up the speed factor of this. And then and a lot of people are like, well, why can't you just do that in Web 2? It's verifiable here. You can verifiably say it happened at this exact second at this
Yeah.
point, and it closed verifiably now. And I think it actually puts on the infra side, like you start having a lot of questions about like, okay, then how are we validating like when something ends now? And there you have all these new companies that I think it's sparked out of the realm of like speed and verification. It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's actually so like that aspect of it is something that like people talk about the specialization, node specialization, like it's kind of
Mhm.
a tagline we've used in the past. I was even confused about like how that truly looked, or like what that actually applied to, I guess you should say, within our ecosystem. And so you were alluding to verifiability there, right? Like you're right, that is the value prop of our space, right? And if you have a single entity, like this is one of the nuances of our space that I'm actually really excited about, is because the structure that we have to have in order to enable what we do actually creates like this unique little hybrid ecosystem with on top. It's not just a sequencer, right? So the sequencer is this big fucking machine, right? Huge, generates a shit ton of data constantly. For you and I to sit there and watch this thing emit this data and to be able to verifiably prove that like it's not lying to me, or like the next thing is true, it's tough, right? Like unless you like ask us to have a shit ton of like hardware in our house to actually do it. So what the team has done, so there's two ways you can do it. Typically what happens, right? There's a whole network around these things. Like if you use Base for an example, Base has a sequencer, it puts out all this information, it's fine. You have all around it the applications that are running full nodes. Full nodes is just like they're not creating blocks, but they're getting blocks fed to them, and they can verify that going from one block to the next block is done in the appropriate way. And then
Mhm.
the state of the chain, right? They have more access to it. Um, if the big box that's producing all this data is too big, then the thing that I have to run locally to verify that like this thing is actually true and not lying to me and the transition made sense, it can get costly. So what happened is like one will have that. It'll be a little bit higher hardware requirements, kind of in the realm of like Solana and Aptos. So not
Mhm.
crazy high, but higher. the team is now has taken that same role. So we have two options. You have the one thing by itself, all self-contained. The node specialization is actually referring to taking that entity and splitting it into multiple entities and having each of those things uh, work together so that in conjunction, they're able to keep up the network with much, much, much lower hardware requirements. So then other people, and it's going to be permissionless, so people can participate. So the names for those things, right? So full node, big thing, does all by itself and keeps up with the network. The node specialization is we take that role and we split it apart into two roles. One is the replica node, which is just instead of doing everything itself, it just like accepts the truth from the sequencer. It says like, hey, this is the new truth. Hey, this is the new truth. And then we have a full network of these things called provers. And they all sit there and they individually verify the blocks that are produced out of the sequencer and then report back to the people that accepted the truth and said like, yeah, man, he's telling the truth. Yeah, man, he's telling the truth. Yeah, he's actually accurate. And so like now you're taking the it's either you're taking the compute, basically the compute power like this of this very big machine, and you're distributing it across all of these things to work together. And with all of them individually working together, you can actually keep up with this thing and not have to have a giant box in your house.
The nod back to the decentralized I think
Yeah.
strategy there is interesting. It's so cool. The more you talk, the more we dig into this. It's like it's such an exciting moment of so many little technical cross trends and pulling from the best of each network, and it's exciting. It is truly exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. And yeah, we have a test net coming in, 30 days. So we just announced that on Monday. People can finally get their hands on it, right? Because like, look, I'm not Elon. I'm not writing the code for this shit. So like half of this stuff for me too is like I understand the vision. I see the history of this guy. I hear him talk, and like I'm, happy to report that I'm not being scammed too, right? Because I'm not writing the code, so like it all lines up in my head. He seems like he can talk the talk. In 30 days, we'll get it out in the hands of a lot of people who are understandably skeptical, and like that's exciting. And then we kind of just keep iterating and building this thing up. And yeah, man, just like as I think as long as we're honest about what we're doing, then there's some hesitancy from the ecosystem, understandably so, because it's not a maximally aligned. But I think it's kind of fun to like, push the space forward and see what comes out the other side.
That's where I think we've seen the most exciting stuff come out of the crypto ecosystem is pushing forward, not cloning what's worked before, but rolling the dice in some sense and saying, all right, we're gonna go against convention, we're gonna try something new, we have a bright idea, and then seeing who's willing to come along for the ride with you. One area I think worth touching on because again, fluffles and these
Yep.
pre-sales and actually even talking about the provers and the replicator is the idea of like how the native token or the tokens are handled, rewarding people, and token distribution is being handled. I think a lot of people have questions there.
Yeah. So it's specifically around the fluffle, right?
I mean the whole shebang, I guess. Like how are you guys handling that outside of just, hey, you guys bought in tokens. How is that
Yeah.
being handled?
Yeah, so I mean, I just described our network. So like we have a lot of things that require incentives within our stuff. Uh, None of that stuff is released. All I'll say is like within the fluffle paradigm, that stuff is understood, right? And what I'm saying that is, there's the 10K collection for 5% of the network, right? That was communicated up front. The unique mechanisms around that is that the team that ran that is they built in two things. One is that the 5% is dynamic, right? And that 5% is the minimum, and it can potentially increase based on the called the evolutions of your NFT. They're going to be dynamic. So like you guys give an input, and through that input, there is potential that it increases the allocation or lowering the FDV of the thing. And then there's also the tokens themselves or the NFTs themselves come with a uh, a vesting, right? So like they have a lock to them, right? So they're soul bound on one, and then once you're able to do that, they come with a vesting schedule. That vesting schedule can actually be accelerated based on KPIs, so key performance indicators. Um, those also have not been announced, but just alluding to the fact that we will give people the options based on, again, input from them. We want to make sure that we're maximally aligned with people, and the people that are giving us value are also receiving value. that, they can both have their allocation of that 5% increased on a per NFT basis, and it can unlock even faster based on, again, inputs that they give us.
Right. Makes sense. On the incentive side, though, and because you mentioned that, and we've seen this with other chains or L2s that have, I think, incentivized really well up to mainnet, and then on the backside, it becomes a ghost town. I'm not going to name anybody. I don't want to put anybody on
I
blast,
get it.
right?
I get it. I get it.
Um, oh, that was a terrible pun. I I'm curious, like on the incentivization side, like how you guys are approaching that, though. I think that's everybody's question, right? And also like
Yeah. Yeah.
L2s are hard businesses, right? Like it's not we've seen like the fee structure, um, like how you guys are approaching this on the incentivization of like, hey, this is how we stick around and keep this as a real a business at the end of the day.
Yeah. So all of that comes from two things. One is the again, we mentioned, a deliberate attempt not to raise and to try to give people skin in the game, right? We believe wealth effects is a key contributor to building a core community, aligning incentives, aligning values, all that stuff. So we've been working really hard to make sure through the mechanisms that we've already deployed, whether it's been Echo, now the NFT thing we're working through, we've worked to make sure that we can try to get, skinned in the game to people who want it, right? So that builds a little bit of wealth effect, a little bit of loyalty, a little bit of community, a little bit of like aligned incentives between us and them. So core, making sure our core is strong through that. And then the other one is just like you have to enable applications, right? You have to build emotional value. You have to like really ride or die with people. And like the builder program we talked about, that accelerator, Mega Mafia again is the name. Like it's not just like, oh, we had an open program, we're going to throw some money at you, give you some grants, and like hope for the best. Like the team's literally been living with these guys for like 30 days at a time, multiple times, right? They've spent 30 days together, all co-building, not just us, not just like our core team with like one or two teams. It is one, we sourced the founders, right? We found people that we're bullish on as founders, not necessarily as like their products, although sometimes we got lucky and found both. But we found people, good people, talented people, people that saw the vision, people that understood, and we bet on them and said, okay, we'll help you raise, we'll help you go to market, we'll help you find dev teams, we'll help you do whatever. Again, this has been going on for a year. So it spent 30 days like hackathon with them in Berlin back, about a year ago. And it's not, and again, it's not just us, it's us and them and them and them and them. So it's all of them co-living together. So now there's a little bit of camaraderie between all of the teams as well. So now we have this environment where we did that in Berlin. We did it again in Chiang Mai back in just after DevCon or just before DevCon. So we're co-living, building them up, building the camaraderie between them. So now these guys are all like pulling for each other. We have a call every week. I literally had one 2 hours ago before we did the announcement for Avon this week, which we're all excited for. We're all rooting for them. And now these guys, because they're all working together, are incentivized to not only just build in silos, they're building an ecosystem broadly that is all interconnected, right? So now, whenever you take a loan out on Techo, it's actually going out to GTE, which is the liquidity pool. And if you're going to be using Euphoria on the back end, it's actually throwing out a lend to Avon, because Avon has been there since day one, and those guys are homies and they like ideating on shit. So now it's not just like you have a couple of green shoots in the ecosystem that all just like happen to be building next to each other. You
Hmm.
have a interwoven network that is growing together, and like through that you kind of build this camaraderie, this native ecosystem of people that are just like betting on each other and betting on the collective, rising up. So that's stickier than just throwing money at stuff.
It is. It certainly is. I think the takeaway there, if I'm understanding this correctly, is like by having this ecosystem of things that work together, by providing a unique use case, by having technical advantages, in this case, high TPS, um, that incentivization to stick around is that it's a environment that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah,
Which is far
that's
better
what
than
it is.
just saying like, hey, we have better yield, or hey, we have there's going to be cooler apps here. Like people will go to where there is like dominance in infrastructure advantage.
Right. Yeah. Like you called out like the TPS. I'm still bricked up on the response. I call it responsiveness of the application or of the chain, right? Just that ability to get instant feedback, which enables things that you literally can't build anywhere else. It's like I had a nerd fight with Mert. It was like a month ago, and he's like, "Name any L2 and like tell me why I can't do it on mainnet." And I literally fought with him for an entire weekend of like, you literally cannot do this on an L1 because an L1 needs consensus. So like, if you have a use case that requires the instant finality guarantees that we're able to give, again, the instantaneous down to 100, 150, 250 milliseconds, right? You literally cannot do that on an L1, right? So there's a clear vertical that we're leaning into that's saying like this app cannot be replicated to the same degree on your chain, right? So there's going to attract certain builders who come to us for that. Now, again, comes with trade-offs. I think it's all that stuff, but like it is. I make pictures occasionally of like literally just bar graphs, right? So it's like there's like a spectrum of like achievability of what's able to be done on chain, right? So you have like Ethereum's down here, then you got a little bit of an unlock with base and the L2s, right? It's a little bit better. Then you got a little bit of an unlock with Solana because it can unlock new use cases because it's faster. It's got local fee markets, all this stuff. And like now, because we have this other unlock, there's like one more additional level that we can go up that is like only possible here, right? So like Omega is like the little tagline we have. It's only on Mega. But it's like because I saw that is where I joined the team. It's like I see something here that is only because it's an L2 as opposed to like you're kind of like afraid of it like as an L2 you're like soft on it, right? It's like I like to see them leaning into like this is only possible because it's an L2. Therefore, it's like there's a vertical for it, and so like that'll attract people and that will lead to a stickier total environment.
How are and back to the incentivization side, like how are and I don't know if you guys have put anything out here, but like on the fee side, being able
Yeah,
to keep this as a business, and I use Base as a good example and Arbitrum and
yeah,
some of these other,
Eaton, right?
right? Like back long ago before we had the not shards or maybe I'm totally blanking when we changed the incentive structure with Ethereum's upgrade.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
um
That
uh
Denkun when they introduced blobs.
yep. We saw
Yep.
the fee structure change dramatically, and it was like, okay, Ethereum's not eating as heavily as you would expect them to, and also
Yeah.
like the race to zero for lower and lower fees removes revenue back to these L2s, but they still have extremely high expenses, and it's not
Mhm.
cheap. Like I think most people are like, oh, I'll just spin up an L2, it's super cheap and easy. It's not.
Yeah.
Um, how are you guys address? Like I want to know like more on how you guys
Yeah,
address that.
so you're getting into like a couple of conversations. One of them is like you're talking about value accrual broadly, right? So pointing to the fees. So for anyone listening, like Ethereum went through Denkun upgrade. Denkun upgrade was in March of last year. What actually happened was like so before that, all these L2s, I mentioned all this information that L2s have to post, right? The proof, the little snippet of thing, and then like all the transaction data. They were pushing all of that shit down to Ethereum into the same block space that you and I were using when we were there, when we were minting, or whatever. It was us against these L2s and all of their data, right? So because of that, burn was pretty fucking high, right? Because like they were willing to pay more. They're less price sensitive, right? So like fees were high, everything was cool, ultrasound money, sick. The What happened in the Denkun upgrade is the change was made to introduce new block space, right? But this block space is only accessible by L2s because it's called blobs, right? So there's the Ethereum block, certain size, and they just said we're going to tack on this other area that's actually cheaper than the regular block space. So now L2s post their shit up here, and all of us can hang out in the normal block space, and like we separate the fee markets, right? It's dynamic; they're both priced differently. It's cheaper, about 10 times cheaper than this block space. So now the cost across all of the L2s that were using this, that were previously using this, it just went down dramatically, right? So like their costs got cut by 90%. Okay. So that happened, and people started saying, well, what the hell? I was one of the ones, I was writing a lot of threads on it. Um, like, what the hell? Like the revenue, if you're part of the like bankless crowd, right? Like that's where I came up from the school of bankless. I learned a lot from them. Amazing. But they parroted the ultrasound money meme. Ultrasound money being that Ethereum burns more than it emits, right? It burns more Ethereum based on usage congestion than it actually creates in block rewards every single block year, whatever. So because usage went down, because the space increased, these L2s now are taking the execution just being like the users, frankly, the user transactions, people actually interacting on the chain, they're taking all of the relationships with the users. They're taking the priority fees that the users are paying to get into like congested block space, and they're basically just paying back, 90%, or sorry, they're paying back about 10 cents on the dollar that they generate back to Ethereum mainnet. So people now, if Ethereum's starting to be inflationary now, people are going, okay, well, how or why is uh, ETH valuable in this paradigm? So you have two buckets, right? So like that's what Elders are doing. That's the current paradigm. Usage on mainnet is not that high anymore because of that additional space. So you have two paradigm or two things, right? Ethereum is valuable, one, because it does generate fees, right? How many fees it needs to generate to be a $400 billion asset? That's for everyone's discounted cash flow model. The other side is like Ethereum as a medium of exchange. Like Ethereum needed to do the cool new thing, whether or not it's actually generating fees, right? It's a little in this category of the cool new thing. It's also just like a general belief that Ethereum will store value, a general belief that Ethereum is a good medium of exchange, all that stuff. Bitcoin has a really strong property in that, right? Ethereum or Bitcoin generates basically no fees, but it's $2 trillion asset, right? Because
Exactly.
people hold on to this thing because it's a store of value in their minds, right? Ethereum generates a little bit of fees more than Bitcoin, and you do need it to one. Some people buy it to store value. Some people buy it to access cool stuff. Like if you think of Base, right? Base doesn't pay a lot of fees back to Ethereum. They pay more than other people, but like as a percentage of their revenue, it's like again they take about a 90% margin. Um, but you need Ethereum on Base to access virtuals, right? That was the cool thing that popped off, right? People acquire ETH because they want to play with virtuals, right? So that's a little bit of the monetary property. Same thing on Solana, right? Solana is you don't buy Solana because you need to pay transaction fees, right? You don't buy Solana because you're like you want to see it burn. You buy Solana to ape 200K into a shitter, right? Like that's a little bit of like a medium of exchange value prop. People start buying this thing to acquire to do or acquiring this thing to do the next cool thing. And then even if I don't want to do it, I buy it because I see a lot of degens are doing the same thing, right? That they're actually aping into the shitters. I just want to have Solana because it's an index on them, whatever. So in that paradigm where you have either the cool access to the cool new thing, store value, whatever, no fees generated here, it's just like a value prop versus like fees generated. Acknowledging that rollups today are basically paying nothing back to Ethereum, right? 90% revenues for base. But they're also not as good of money because they can't create cool new use cases, right? They're not as good as Solana. You're buying Solana to do Solana stuff because
Yep.
Solana's faster, cheaper, whatever.
Yep.
So they're like in this middle ground of like they're not really paying a lot. They're not exactly cool and like enabling new shit. They're just kind of like there. Again, collective TPS across all rollups, all 40 of them. It's like 200 TPS. It's not a lot. It's like they're in this weird middle ground. You don't have access to your crypto punk on base. You don't have access to your collateral position. It has no awareness of Ethereum, so it doesn't have that property either. It's just kind of there. So we're like, all right, fuck it. Like we're going to pay even less to Ethereum, which is already, it's not a lot for base. Again, they take 90% on the dollar. We'll take even less, bump the margins to like 99%, and we'll just enable cool shit. People will need to acquire ETH to do whatever weird, wacky shit that we enable, right? Because they want to do that. So like now the moneyness property goes potentially through the roof because now people aren't spending all the time degenning on Solana. They're spending the time degenning on MegaETH, right? Or they're spending the time playing the new streamer game on MegaETH. And that's how the proliferation of ETH or moneyness actually happens in that ecosystem. Now, like there's other components to that, right? It takes money to run the sequencer, it takes money to do all that stuff. So like the fees we charge will be based on like making sure that we can have like that stuff's just at cost, frankly,
Gotcha.
out the door.
Yep.
So like we'll make sure that's good. We'll make sure that like the team can actually survive. But outside of that, it's just trying to enable that use case, enable the stuff, and we'll eventually scale that up. But we got to just get out the door and make sure that things are operational.
Damn. I was really salty I didn't get in the echo round, and I was salty I'm not on this whitelist, and you're just making the pain more and more every time you open your mouth. It's not good.
Check all your wallets. We're gonna have a so I bet people are gonna be surprised. Again, there's like 80,000 things whitelisted. We're gonna do a post. It might have actually already gone out. I don't know. From Bing. She will have detailed the methodology of what is and is not on that whitelist. I would bet that you're probably on there in some things that you didn't even realize it, and you just haven't checked it yet.
Okay, I'm praying because I checked both my main wallets and I didn't have it, and I was like,
It's off chain stuff too. It's email addresses. We have some GitHub stuff. Like we have a bunch of shit. If do you do events at all?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So maybe check some emails.
Oh man,
Yeah.
this
Did you vote in Kaido?
I did vote. Yes,
Did you vote for us?
I believe so.
like you
I
did
I
for us, then maybe you'll get in. I We have to get the information from you, but that's something we want to try to do. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's amazing. It's so incredibly exciting. Um, and we'll see. I again, I know you
who
guys.
knows? We're gonna run the experiment. Who the fuck knows? Like
Yeah,
it's
you
you
guys have
know.
been so transparent too. Like I can't even like. I would be mad if you guys were like, all right, whitelist, and then went like dead silent. And I think that's an issue a lot of projects have of like just being like, you have no idea, and there's no transparency, and there's no proof of like, here's our methodology.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Um,
balance, right? So like you have to avoid people gaming shit. So like we're trying to balance like we're gonna tell the thought process on how we chose our cohorts and then see how descriptive we want to get. I don't know if we're gonna say like exact criteria, but we'll at least tell like the thought process, the buckets, and then like let people infer from there.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
On the community side, since we're kind of touching on all these people that are getting touch points here,
Mm.
how what is your I think approach to making this content and kind of getting people onboarded in and keeping them attentive before you're even at testnet? I think there's a lot of people that have questions around, how to do it correctly and how to, even when there's like FUD on the market, keeping people
Yeah.
active.
Yeah, like, so keeping people active has never been our thing. So, um, like, we've explicitly tried to stop people from spamming and
Mm,
doing whatever, like, coming to Discord and, like, "Stay active, grind, bro." Like, no, like, dude, no one wants to fucking grind. Like, so we've been trying to identify and encourage, like, even if infrequent, meaningful impacts, right? So, like, as an example, right? Like in the Discord, we have our big sequencer energy. Like they're the people that we think of like exemplified. Either they understand us or they've told our story well or whatever. Like we in this last round of people that we promoted, like we explicitly made sure to call out people that like zero messages in the Discord, zero. Like they were someone that like within their domain, whether it was on X or whether it was like they're streaming or like just creating art that was fucking dope and like really hit our aesthetic and like constantly pumping it out. It's just like, yeah, man, like if that's your jam, like do what comes natural to you. And if it aligns with us, like we're gonna do our best to isolate you and elevate you. And just like we don't want to like do the unnatural shit. So we've just been trying to be really cognizant of doing that kind of stuff, frankly.
makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that short term kind of FOMO ness to it has a
Yeah.
long term damaging effect. Where people then just are like their minds link into like financial incentivization and profit and
Which we
um
get. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a thing, right? That's everything's financialized in our industry. And like, yeah, like we have a lot of people on that whitelist. We caught people like selling them on an aftermarket already. So it's like, bros, come on. Like we're doing our best, but we understand that like, people are in it for profit sometimes. So
Right, right. Real quick to maybe step off of MegaETH
yeah.
a little bit here and focus back to who you are because you're a wealth of knowledge. You're always active in the community. I'd love to get your take on a few things here. Um, we touched on Kaito, which has
Yeah. Yeah.
become
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean like you're dominating on Kaito, and it's been I think a one of the best things to come out this cycle from like a new dynamic perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Would you
how
classify it as socialify?
um, I've classified it as incentivized social. So yes, I do think it is socialfy. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And they were throwing the tag of like infofy on it. Like, yeah, it's like it's at an intersection.
I think you would change it to Infofy when they integrate some of the new things. I'll do like video and live streaming and
Nice.
um
I
when
think
they
they do
start.
images now, right? Didn't they just do an update with that?
I believe so, yeah, but they're
Yeah.
I kinda told them, I was like, "Look, you guys don't." I go and stream for an hour with Bread Guy, and there's a ton of wealth of information in there, and
Yeah.
tons of people retweet it, and they're commenting, but I get, like, that hour of me not tweeting is still providing value, and it still is providing
Yeah.
influence
Yeah.
to like, this is an hour of Mega ETH. I will
Right.
get no reward from doing that, and so I think they recognize that, which is great, and they understand that if they really do want to be InfoFi, they have to it has to address everything info, and that doesn't just
Yep.
mean like yapping a tweet. So I'm excited
Yep.
for the evolution of what they're doing,
Do you have
personally.
any indication of moving towards that? Or
I
like integrating video at any port or
Yeah, no,
portion? Like,
I asked, Yoohoo, and he said, "Yes, that's coming."
sick.
Like, it's on
Because
there.
I imagine you don't have to actually see it, right? If you can get the transcript, then you can infer a lot of stuff from that. The AI can digest that, and boom, right? It's log. It's a a thread basically. It's a giant, giant, giant thread.
Yep. They're already doing that to an extent, and I know that, like, even on our side, like, what we do with, like, AI, like, we are seeing X even lean more into providing more information and tools so that it's even easier. They
Oh,
haven't
nice.
been vocal about it, but it's on, like, the API side, it's getting pretty simple to just be able to quantify that almost
Hell
instantly.
yeah. Yeah, man. I'm all about it. Like I spent a lot of time in the friend tech trenches back in the day because like the whole like trying to find a way because you're right. Like what you're doing is incredibly valuable. How to and everyone recognizes that, right? Everyone. I think that's why you have like this latent demand of like every time a social fi thing comes along and everyone like starts to really engage with it is because we all recognize that there is an immense amount of value that is being emitted in this ecosystem and these spheres in a bunch of different mediums, whether it's shit posting or, in the DMs or doing video or whatever. Like there's immense amount of value and people want to be able to quantify that and enable that and reward that, distribute against that, all that shit. So I got bricked up on friend tech. Oh, that obviously didn't work out because I thought that was a good way to do like paid DMs kind of stuff. Like
Yep.
there was something there. They didn't leverage it. I'm really excited about what these guys are doing. Kaido just with AI being able to process the data and like gamify it a little bit. And because it's not intrusive to what you're already doing, which is something that I'm super bullish on. I don't think you see Farcaster, right? Farcaster's trying to compete with X. Like awesome. It's a great endeavor. I'm skeptical that they'll ever be able to dethrone X, right? Like it's so sticky, and they have so many advantages as a Web 2 platform, and all the money, and like
Yep.
there's a lot there. So I'm enjoying it. It's fun. Plus, I
It's
I yap a lot, so
Yeah, you do yap a lot. You you yap so much. Um, I'm also curious to get your take on, general market, how you're navigating the craziness of it all right now. I know you're more, again, focused on MegaETH, but you do have a lot to offer, I think, in reflections of, what you like and sectors and overall sentiment.
my benefit to the market is that I am pretty even keeled on this stuff, and that like I would trust me. I wish I was super incentivized by just like raw trading, meme coining, looking at macro, all that stuff. But like for whatever reason, my brain just does not switch on whenever I see like the opportunity to just like purely make money. So trading, just outright trading, trying to predict the market, trying to do stuff and trying to make money on it has just never been something that's been great for me. So for me, I just have such immense confidence in the space. I have this belief that if I continue to just contribute in the ways that I contribute, which is like, again, yapping, talking about technical stuff, like that's kind of how I'm okay with that being my source of income, even if it is not a direct thing. I think if I do it enough because it's the thing that I enjoy, people also will enjoy it. And therefore I will be rewarded for that in some capacity. You could look at that like this info right with Kaido, and I'm getting a bunch of yaps. I was able to get some of the NFTs. I was able to join MegaETH because I yapped a lot. Like, so it's not a direct trading thing. I'm so confident on the industry itself, and it's just like it energizes me that I just continue to do that stuff, and I get the money indirectly as opposed to just going directly from like making a 20% on a trade, over the course of the day. So like, yeah, it's hard for me to look at charts. I literally don't know. I learned from the mega market or the modern market guys. I come in the morning, they're like, "Oh yeah, price is down." Like, cool. Like, I'll see you in 6 months. Like, I'll be
If anybody is listening, you're not following Modern Market, highly suggest going and checking them out. It's my favorite piece of content in Web3, I think personally. Bread Guy, B Check, and Legendary. It's a great dynamic. You guys always have good content.
yeah,
Uh,
appreciate that.
and I'm happy to shill stuff I love and for good people as well. Um, I have one final question for MegaETH, and then we can kind of wrap up here. Because it was bugging me. I couldn't remember when you were talking earlier what it was, but this whole idea of like the only reason you go to Seoul is to get your shitters, and then like this idea of like going to a certain place to be able to do a certain thing. and then
Yeah.
having certain assets and access to certain things on certain chains. The idea of interoperability is one that everybody loves to bring up.
Yeah.
How are you guys approaching that?
This steps into a fun one, right? Because like there's the political alignment of like, oh, L2s are friends. We don't have to go. We'll interop. We'll play nice together. And I'm here to loudly say like, L2s are competitors, man. So like, will we have bridges to other chains? Will we do it? Like, yeah, of course. Like people will build it even if we don't want them to. It's a permissionless system, but we will not prioritize it because our prioritize is going up. Like we're vertical. We're kind of doing the Solana mindset of like, if you want to have a network extension to us, like these L2s can be network extensions. Awesome, cool. But we're going to prioritize making our domain as fast and as big as possible so that people don't have to bridge out. So um, I say this and like knowing full well that the initiative to continue to do interop stuff will continue to happen. I just think I've seen enough from the market like swinging back to what Solana offers because like the thought was eventually on a long enough time horizon, all apps will eventually become an app chain. They will capture 100% of their value, and like interop and atomic composability will come from just sufficient technology and like which is fine. It may actually happen, but I'm just of the belief that simplicity, convenience, and distribution are ultimately winning out, and you get a lot of that coalescing in a single composable environment. So people are willing to let go of the maximally super ultra decentralized thing if it means having to do 75 hops to get rid of whatever in exchange for like, dude, it's kind of convenient. It's kind of nice. Like it is everything that I want. I don't need more than that. And I think the unicorns of the world, like the unichains, like or the Uniswap, may still yes go off and be their own chain. Like they're big enough to do this stuff. They can run the dev team. They can do all this shit. I just think on average, you're not going to see that. And we over indexed, frankly, on like thinking how blown out that world is going to be.
Hmm.
We'll swing back to these big single environments, even if because the big pushback on that is like, oh, you can't handle the whole world on your chain. Like I don't think we can. I agree. But that's not the point, right? The value accrual thesis is easier whenever you have one big thing doing the stuff, even if it can like conceivably reach like 65%, 25%, doesn't even fucking matter of the world. If 25% of it is distributed into one environment versus the 75% distributed across 85 environments, I think value accrual and simplicity and distribution and ease of use and all that shit is going to be much easier to synthesize in that small environment. And I think that is more valuable than the distributed value across the other 75%. And I think the market's showing us that. So that's the bet.
I was not expecting that answer. I think it's a fantastic answer. I think you probably will face a little debate on that, but I think again, going against the grain has proven to I think open some people's eyes when things are live and you can see what it sparks.
Yeah.
Um Brad guy, I can't thank you enough, man. This has been fantastic to get to know more about you and what you guys are working on over at MegaETH. Is there anything else you want to leave us with that we didn't get to cover? Any alpha, any sneak peeks or hints at what's to come? Um,
Yeah, I mean, obviously the hot thing is the fluffle thing, right? So I would just say like we're in the throes right now. So like 7 days from now is supposed to be the actual mint. I would just say we're keep your eyes peeled. We'll have updates over the next 7 days to make sure that we approach this thing in a very mindful way to try to avoid yeah anything too catastrophic. Like it's not good for anyone. So we want to mitigate it, and we're listening. So give me open feedback. We're open to criticisms and suggestions. A lot of people reached out, thankfully. So yeah, just keep iterating and keep your eye out.
Fantastic. Uh, Again, thank you for coming on. I love it. And thank you to everybody else who was a viewer today and tuned in. Appreciate it as always.